Good morning, fellow friends and patriots. Sorry I've been kind of quiet, but I've been busy. We've been busy taking care of things around here on the homestead, and I do not want to have my channel be one of those kinds of channels where I'm constantly putting out content that either may or may not be useful for you. The stuff is going to be up there. You can peruse it at your leisure. But I know some people put in a ton of content, and that's great. Mine's going to be a little bit more low key because I have stuff that I do, and it's just us out here, and we don't have little behind the scenes workers to be able to get a lot of stuff done. So if I'm not doing it, it doesn't get done. But I wanted to take some time in this season, summertime, as a season of freedom and liberty. Okay, I'm sitting here on my porch with the backdrop of the corner of my log cabin, and I know we just had Independence Day, and I hope everybody had a very nice Independence Day, as nice as you can have with all the kind of still shutdowns and lockdowns. Ours was pretty low key. That's just how we roll in general, though. And even though it is late, as far as a July 4th or even really July 2nd celebration, because that's when the majority of the document was signed as on July 2nd, the concepts of freedom and liberty should be just as valid on January 4th as they are July 4th, right? So I wanted to go over a couple things, just some thoughts. And I wanted to start off and kick off with something a little bit tangible, if you will. I propped myself truly in front of this corner of my log cabin because I wanted to show and discuss a little bit about some sign language. Okay, the sign for America is this. Okay, it's interlocked fingers, right? Interlocked fingers. Looks an awful lot like that because that's what it's representing, right? So you have the interlocked fingers and you end up going around in a circle, right? That's the sign for America. That's our sign. Now, other countries that I have heard, they do kind of like shooting, cowboys kind of thing, but our sign is America, and most other countries should be respectful and actually use our sign for that. So interlocked fingers, and what it's supposed to represent is a log cabin, and log cabin here, log cabin here, log cabin here, log cabin here, like all across the country, we had log cabins. So instead of just doing like that, it's a fluid motion. Okay, so that's the sign for America. The log cabin is a very quintessential structure that we have. I believe it actually came from some of the North European countries that they had something similar. It was an easy way to get a house up in the frontier. We had lots of timber to be able to do that, and they're pretty good structures once you get them up. I use this as an example of, if you want to call it, an American homestead. Okay, that's what I kind of consider myself, even though we have ourselves as Blackberry Patch Homestead because we have gobs of blackberries everywhere here. But as an American or Americana homestead, one of the things that we have done is a melding of history as much as we can and material culture. Now, if I was smart, when I had taken some of my American history classes, there was a degree of having history as well as I think it's a archaeology or actually I think it was called material culture. So it's about the stuff of history, if you will, right? So it can be a building, it can be a tool, it can be a lot of different things. I think that in our educational system at the moment, we have a lot of this kind of stuff that just gets glossed over because I think that it will make history more interesting. I have not met anybody who has gone to a museum but more specifically, like some of the historical reenactments where they can see all of these kinds of things played out in a theatrical type way, and it has not made an impact on them. So it is very, I think, germane to learning history. The rote stuff that we do, where we sit and we read a book, and we have to memorize certain important key dates, is by far less, I think, impactful than learning truly some of the stories and making some of the connections of what people had to do, and the tasks that were required of them on a day-to-day basis, or even under special circumstances. So one of the things when we did some of our historical reenactments, we learned a lot about history. Can't say that we're experts or anything along those lines, but when we moved up here, when we decided to start our homestead, it kind of just happened. I don't want to say accidentally, but it was sort of just our interests that we liked. Sorry, my AC is running. I have a modern homestead, what can I say? There were just certain things that we liked, right? So we liked a lot of the American history and the Americana and the material culture, and so we incorporated some of these things, and some of them were done purposefully, and some things were done very much on accident. One thing that we have, our dog, he is an Australian Shepherd, and even though he is considered a Australian Shepherd, he's almost as American as you can get as far as a breed goes. They don't know specifically the history of, how an Australian came about, but it was the Australian cowboys that had these dogs, and they were, they say, a cross between border collies and cattle dogs, and maybe regular collies. We don't know exactly, but they made this breed of dog for what they were doing out in the American West, and they are wonderful dogs, very, very smart, very good watchdogs and shepherds, and a true American dog, right? That one just kind of fell in our lap. We didn't actually, go out for that one. The chickens that we have are Dominiques. They are the kinds of chickens that the colonists had way back when. That was a conscious choice. We did that because of the historical significance of them, the heritage breed, but then also because they are very rugged. If they weren't so rugged, I don't know if I'd want to have them out here. But we are living our life to a large extent more rugged. I'm not going to say rough, but definitely more rugged. We live in a, very, very much a wilderness out here. And I don't need to have a chicken that, doesn't have a little bit of smarts about itself. It's important. So this is sort of the way, even though we're not super involved in some of the historical reenactments because we've just been busy here around our homestead, this is sort of how we are kind of continuing on with it. To learn to be involved, and we're doing it on a daily basis. We're not just going to an event, packing up our gear, going to an event that lasts 3 or 5 or 7 days, and then we come back home to our apartment and everything all sleek and modern, okay? It's literally a daily experience, all right? So what I would like for people to do in this season of the summertime of freedom and independence, learn some history. If you can, get out and go to some of the events that may be happening in your local area. Read some books. I remember when I took some of my history classes, this is a book called The Real History of the American Revolution, and it was probably one of the best general one book about the American Revolution that kind of talked about everything. Granted, a lot of history is very complex and very in-depth, and you can't really go over every little bit of it. But as far as, if you've never read a book before about the American Revolution, there's a ton out there, but this is a good one to start with. One of the other things, too, is in our education, if you will. Education not as in school. Education as in just learning. right? So experiment with some things, use a scientific method, whatever, decide like, hey, I want to try and do X, and read up on it, research it a little bit, figure out what you need to do, and then do it. Putting your hand to the plow, so to speak, just doing something is by far many times more instructive than sitting in a classroom, okay? Sometimes it's great to have teachers, especially a really, really good teacher, that they can streamline your learning. A lot of times learning is not linear. If you're doing it on your own, you start, you stop, you zing off to the side somewhere, and you're kind of all over the place until you finally start to hone in where you need to go and what you need to do. Once you get a few basic skills under your belt, and you can say, oh, okay, I understand more now where I need to go. But learning as a concept, when you're on your own, a lot of times it's not particularly linear. Books are really wonderful. I had I'll say it probably in other videos in the future, I had a mentor who we were talking about child development and that kind of stuff, and about literacy, about reading specifically. When you are born, your brain is a sponge. You're just absorbing everything in, right? And from the time that you're born to the time that you're in about second grade or so, your brain is set up and designed to learn, specifically to learn to read. You're learning language, and you're learning written language. So you learn how to read. Once you get to, you're doing that to that point roughly, okay? And then once you get to second grade and on, you read to learn. You should be able to take what you know and build upon that, get a better vocabulary, and obviously learn more complex ideas and thoughts, and boring reference manuals on how to do something. But much of what you are reading should be able to instruct you, because you're not going to get a lot of times better by, I don't know, just staring at the television, which that's a whole other thing. So experiment with some things, learn some new things, and if you put it in a historical context, and I think that that's actually a really neat little experiment, do that, and you might be able to learn a thing or two about history, whether it's your own family history, like you heard that, say, maybe in your family made wine, or somebody did sewing or something like that, and you want to learn some of that from your literally own family background, or something through the American experience. I only see good things that come from that. Homesteading as a lifestyle, if you want to go even further, is expanding it, right? Is not just maybe one or two little things or reading a little bit. You may not be able to do what we do. This is literally something that we have planned and dreamed about and have been working for almost 20 years. Okay, this is not something that was just a whim. This was something that we had thought of and desired for a very long time, and we had to save for it. We could not get to the point where we were, able to do what we've done. And there's good and bad to that. When you're older, it's harder physically on you, but you also can, afford a few things that maybe you couldn't do when you were younger. Preferences, if you're real young and you want to do it, I'd say go for it. If you can figure out a way to do it, I would say do it. But living your life in a homestead lifestyle is kind of sticking close to home to a large extent. You are here at your house doing things, learning things, making things for yourself, maybe for your community, some friends, some family. Your scope of how far you're going to go is probably going to be fairly small, at least initially. Maybe you can start a business or something in the future, but ultimately it's going to be small. You're not going to go down, you're not going to be running to town all the time. If you're the kind of person that I can't stand it, I got to go see people, I got to go do whatever, I mean, you might be able to find a happy medium, but a lot of times with the work and the things that you do, you're home. You're definitely home more often. And again, increasing your skill sets, growing a garden, it's not as easy as just, you know, scratching the ground and throwing some seeds down. Generally, there's some things that you have to do ahead of time. Learning how to do some hunting, some fishing, learning, you know, one of the things that I got exposed to with some of the historical reenactments that has stuck with me is the fiber, the yarn, spinning, weaving, you know, knitting. Those things I just find to be very interesting. I don't know why. It's just one of those things I just think is really cool, and it's always stuck with me, and I continue to do it. I continue to do it probably until I die, because I've been doing it for well over 10 years now, and it hasn't diminished any. In fact, it's actually gotten it's actually become more of a interest as time has gone on. And then the other thing too, I don't want to make this into a negative thing, but you know, homesteading as a political solution, yes and no. I think that stepping back from a lot of the stuff that's going on, especially with television, just stop with the TV. I mean, TV is pretty bad. If you can step back from that and understand that there's literally going to be like almost like a detox process that you're going to have to go through. There's so much junk that's going on television that you don't even realize that you're getting programmed. You just really don't. And step away from it, start looking at things more objectively, and make some of your own decisions. It takes a while, though. I would say probably a couple years, honestly, before you start looking at things from a very different perspective, because life will continue on in the mainstream media and pop culture, and you're going to be stuck at that year, if you will, that you've decided to finally unplug, and you're gonna have less in common, if you will, with the pop culture group and the pop whatever that's happening at the time, and you're not going to understand it as well. And when you do that, you can get some perspective. It's like focusing something. It does help. You don't want to be so removed that you don't know what's going on, but at the same time, you know, try and retain more of your autonomy. I think that's pretty important. We fought a war to not have a king, right? And that's a pretty important thing. We have rights and we have responsibilities. We have a representative government. Yeah, you have rights. You have responsibilities that go along with those rights. I hear people yelling about their rights. I don't really hear too many people yelling about their responsibilities. You have a responsibility to participate in your government. I also hear people saying, well, I voted for so-and-so, and they need to go take care of that. Yes and no, okay? You vote for somebody and you end up having them as your representative. That doesn't mean that representative turns around and gives you a pedicure, okay? They don't become the person who does the heavy lifting completely, okay? They're supposed to go and be the representative for their people, for their constituents, but they are not to do your bidding, okay? It doesn't exactly work like that. There should be things too, because we have other people in the world that they don't agree with you, and that representative still represents them too, okay? So just to be able to say, well, I voted for them and it's their responsibility and they have to take care of it, that doesn't work for me. There's still, you have to check on them. You have to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So yeah, I think that's it. And just remember, you are the gold. See y'all.